You're listening to the greatest multifamily investment advice show. My name is Adam Ross, and now I'm talking everything multifamily for an in-depth conversation, and I will be diving deep into raising capital, deals, and underwriting process. Welcome back to the greatest multifamily advice show. Today we have Quentin D'Souza, an exceptional guest and real estate investor out of Durham region of Ontario, whose career is more than 20 years between real estate, book author, joint venture, raising capital, and all sort of funds. How are you, Quentin?
I'm doing well. How about yourself, Adam?
Thanks so much for being with me today, and I appreciate your taking the time.
Hey, no problem. I'm always glad to talk to people about real estate.
Good to hear. So, Quentin, your background is super impressive, and we want to start with the beginning. What was the motivation to say, I want to start learning about real estate, especially that you're coming from teaching side and you change your career, I think, or you're still working on
Yep.
teaching?
No, I left teaching in 2014. I was experimenting with different things. I did consulting while I was a teacher. I worked for different book companies and things like that on the side, and I started to experiment with different ways to create wealth for my family. 2004, I bought my first property, and in 2008, I said, "Wow, this really works well." And so
It is.
I decided to buy more.
Yeah.
And then in 2008, I was buying 4 or 5 a year. And then I took my master's in education, and I was going to be a school principal. But I found that it made more sense for me. I had to make a choice in 2013, continue going through administration or become an entrepreneur. And being an entrepreneur really spoke to me more, and focusing on my real estate portfolio and being able to do different things. So I decided to, in 2013, just focus on real estate. I left teaching in 2014. I used a number of different strategies, flipping. I did 12 flips in a year. And then I decided that flipping was more of a job than teaching was. So I decided to stop doing that. In 2015, I started to buy small apartment buildings with my other strategies. I was doing duplex conversions and things like that as well. And then to date, I've got 24 apartment buildings, closing on the 25th, the 94 unit in June. I'm continuing to grow. I've got 2 other apartment buildings under contract closing in August, and I just continue to grow that portfolio. I'm at 98 million in assets in Ontario, and a couple other million in assets in the US. So I'm continuing to grow. I'm an active investor. I've written books because I still like to teach, and I have a coaching program that I have one of my former students who runs for me, and I continue to run Durham REI, which has been a great way for me to get my teaching out as well. So we actually have members from across Canada, but it's a great way for people who are interested in learning to interact with other people who are going in the same direction. I encourage people to always, even if you're, just say you're in Edmonton or you're in Nova Scotia, like in Halifax, find a local group of people who are investing in real estate in your area. There's a lot of different ways to do that nowadays. You can go on Meetup, you can do Facebook searches and find different different groups that are out there, and then you can meet with them and continue to learn and grow, and you create a peer network, which I think is really helpful.
So as you said, you change because you didn't want to work at like additional job when you're doing flipping. So you focus to grow your business and sub everything, which basically allow you to grow. That's why you choose multifamily, not doing more flipping in your career.
I think the difference between, I think you can make 1 to 4 units more of a business. And I have done that because of the scale and the amount of units that I have. It becomes more of a business. But what's neat about multifamily buildings is because of the size of the asset and the number of units under one roof, you're able to create each multifamily building as if it were a small business, right? And each small business, you want to make sure that you're making money at the end of the month, that you have a business plan that you're trying to implement, and then you're able to achieve that business plan through perhaps a refinance, and then
Very
holding
strategic.
the asset again, right? With on the apartment building, like I've refinanced apartment buildings, the same apartment building 3 times, right? So it just depends on the strategy, and as long as you're able to continue to turn over units, create that spread between what the market rent is and what the old rent is, then you're able to create additional value because you're increasing your net operating income, and therefore you can refinance the asset again and again, and it allows me to take those funds and invest them into other buildings and other projects. Whereas in the 1 to 4 unit space, what often happens is you end up capping out because of your debt coverage ratio at a much lower mortgage amount. So even though the value of the project is higher, let's say like you could have a duplex in Oshawa worth 1.2 million, but based on the rents, you can only qualify at like 600,000. And the only way to access those because of the debt coverage ratio.
Correct.
So you could probably put like a second mortgage in there or something like that in order to try to access more of the
But
property.
the DSR is more about plus 5 units. If a duplex in Oshawa is they're not gonna apply the 1.2 or 1.1 DSR.
Well, as you see, it depends on how you're looking at it. If you're looking at it from a personal perspective, qualification, that's different than when I'm buying in corporations in the 1 to 4 unit space, right?
Correct. Correct.
And that's why I'm speaking from that perspective, because that's how I'm looking at it. I run a business. I don't put things in my personal name in the 1 to 4 unit space, right?
Correct.
So that's
You
why
still
it's a
buying
little different.
any single family home or we can say residential loan like less than 4 units? You still doing it?
It it depends because I did last year. I bought a triplex last year because I owned a fourplex beside it, and it allows me to have
Okay.
both pieces of land, and
Correct.
I'm able to build something larger on that piece of land. I'm going. It's going to take a long time, and both cash flow quite well as is, so it's okay to own them. But eventually, my business plan is a bigger building on that land. So I will if it makes sense,
Mm.
but the challenge is I prefer to work in the larger apartment building space. I find that I'm able to do more faster and acquire better assets that I can have more of a team around me that are working on those assets. Um,
So my question is, uh, I see a lot of like the trend now or the niche is going out of Ontario if you wanna acquire more. But I guess right now what you're saying is you're focused more on Durham region. You're buying more about no,
No. So
no.
our properties are actually from Pickering out to Ottawa along the 401 corridor. So I'm
Oh,
not
okay,
buying in the Durham region per se. I'm buying in Kingston and Belleville and different areas along the 401 corridor where the cap rates make sense. I'm still buying at like a 3.5 to
mm,
5 cap rate, depending on what I can do, as long as I see that there's enough spread in the rents to be able to carry out a business plan, that I'm interested in the property. I'm not buying at a 3 cap rate where there's very like
2.5 here in Toronto.
2.5, where the actual spread on the new rents versus the old rent is like $1,000, like across the whole building.
It's
I'm
gonna
not
be
going to do
negative cash
that.
flow basically. If you're gonna
Yeah.
buy it with 2.5 or 3, you're gonna pay from your pocket already.
Yeah, that's right. Unless you have a business plan that allows you to move that asset to a higher value quickly,
Yeah, yeah.
right? Then it makes sense. Like, especially in that 2.5 cap rate situation, if you see a spread of $1,000 per unit, and let's say it's a 6 unit building, right? That's $6,000. That spread of $6,000 multiplied by 12, right? So, and then divided by the cap rate. So let's say that's a significant times 12. And let's say that, what do you want to use the cap rate at? 0.03 cap rate. So that gives us, so we said 6,000 times 12 equals 72,000 divided by 0.03 cap rate. That equals a value increase of 2.4 million, right? So if you see, the challenge is looking at it as if it's just a 2.5 cap rate, right? Sometimes you have to be able to see what you can create out of it and how confident you are to be able to implement that business plan. It's not just looking at the cap rate as it is, but what your plan is to, and I wouldn't necessarily buy an asset like that, because I can do the same thing and still have a spread between the cap rate and my interest rate. So I have at least some return on the asset. But if I know what I'm doing and I can carry out a business plan, perhaps pay out a few tenants to leave, be able to turn over those units, then I can create value. That's a lot. Most people won't be able to do that because they don't have the confidence or the ability to do it. Whereas I've been doing this for
20 years.
Years.
20 years, correct? Almost 20 years.
2014 or 2004. Sorry. So that's I don't know.
18.
That's a long time. 18 years.
Yeah, 18 years. Okay.
Yeah. So I have the ability to be able to, I have the confidence, and I've gone through many cycles with property. So I've gone through full cycle on a number of projects and implemented, right? I just did in March a 12 unit building that we bought 3 years ago. We bought it for 1.75. We got it refinanced in March at 2.65 million or 2.63 million with a mortgage of 1.83. So that means that I've given my partners back the $500,000 that we used, plus we split, whatever it is, 83,000 between the two of us. And now we continue to own that asset. And I'll continue to turn over units. Probably in 3 years, we'll refinance that asset again, do the same thing. This time I'll get a little bit more because I won't have to pay back my partners their initial investment. And that's my typical business plan when it comes to these type of properties in Ontario.
I have a question about this, to be honest, because
Sure.
right now, because of the inflation and the prices, to be honest, this is my business plan right now. I'm moving to Saskatchewan because of the price, the inflation, the cash flow. But you're targeting something similar to Saskatchewan because you're saying that you're going to Belleville. I'm not going to say Kingston is the same because Kingston is a big community anyway. But why you stick with Ontario? Why is not like I met with many investors, like they keep pushing for the cash flow, and you're doing the same, but your approach is different. You're staying in Ontario still, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah. So why not? You like to be closer?
Because it's hard.
Hard.
Yeah, it's hard.
Yeah.
And all those people who are leaving, thank you.
Including me. Okay.
Thank you. No, it's true. Like I'm doing something that's hard that other people can't do. And what that gives me is a unique business plan that I have historical, the ability to have been able to carry it out. And yeah, it's more difficult, and the prices are difficult to work with. And you can't just, I haven't bought a property off the MLS. I've never bought a building off the MLS, right? I've always bought through pocket listings, broker listings, private listings, my own advertising. I've always done that to be able to buy properties. So I
always off market.
All of them.
Always off market.
Everything.
Okay.
Always. Yeah. I've worked hard to be able to do what we've been able to do, and good partnerships with good people, right? That's the key, to be able to have those good relationships with lots of people to be able to make it happen. And I think that it's okay if you're, I want you to be careful if you just look at price, because price point is a two-edged sword. So usually if you're looking at because of price, you may be able to get cash flow, but you may have a tough time with cap rates. You may not have the reason why, you have a 3 cap in one area and a 5 cap in another is because 5 cap probably was 8 cap before, right? And now it's at 5 cap. So you're seeing cap rate compression, but the reason why cap rates are what they are is for 3 reasons, right? One is the location of the asset. 2
Correct.
is the condition of the building. So just the overall condition of the building. And 3 has to do with interest rates, right? Those are the 3 things that make up cap
When you're
rate.
saying a second one, you mean the NOI, because the actual condition is reflective of the expenses and income, correct?
No, yeah, partially. Like if you were to think of the second condition of the asset, think of like buying a new building that was built in the last 3 years versus a building that was built in the 1970s, right? So that's going to affect the cap rate
Correct.
of the asset, right?
Yeah,
Because
100%.
of the condition of the building. So
Correct.
that's all part of what makes
You mean the
up
class A or class B or class C or D?
Yeah, you could say that. I don't think that we have really class D in Canada as compared to the
US.
US,
Yeah,
right?
correct.
But I mean, I could argue that we have class C.
A lot of areas, yeah.
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 So I think that those are all things that you have to keep in mind when you're thinking about net operating income, right? And you have to be careful if you're just going for price, because right now what we have is a very high demand for units because we have a population that's increasing. We have governments that cannot communicate with each other. Like we have federal and provincial governments who want more housing, who want to invest in housing, and we have municipal governments that don't want any building in their backyard. They don't want to, the NIMBYism, the people who are like bananas who control, like they build anything nowhere and nothing anywhere people, right?
Yeah,
And
suddenly a bomb in Canada starting from 2017 because of the immigrations. I'm an immigrant. I'm not sure if you. I think every
yes,
one
I
of
am
us is
too. Yeah.
immigrants. But
1970s. Yeah.
yeah, but I'm new immigrant, 15. But yeah, I think all of this because, as you said, no coordination between the governments, federal and provisionals, and all of the middle class is paying for the inflation and the huge increase of the prices. Basically, in the last 10 years, the prices is doubled.
Yeah, and the thing is that everybody is blaming other people and other things, right? So like if you try to tell people, you try to tell some economists that it's like it's not supply and demand, that it has something to do with something else. Okay, that's fine. I understand that that's all part of it. Yes, we have an issue with the amount of the money supply that's increased in the last 2 years. But if you increase supply, normally what happens is that prices come down. Look at what's happened in March versus January and February of this year in lots of areas around Ontario. When you're looking at the residential market, you're seeing a lot more listings come on and you're seeing prices come down.
Yeah,
I've seen prices
the average
come
going down a
in,
little bit right now.
yeah, Peterborough, Kingston, Northumberland, Niagara. So that's a whole bunch of different areas. Durham region is also the same thing. So it has to do with supply and demand, and it has other factors too. We have interest rates going up. Those are all part and parcel. But I'm telling you that people discount supply more than they should, right? And if we do need to have a consistent supply of new housing that's coming online. Also, I think that
matching immigration at least, because almost all of the immigration coming to Ontario, especially GTA.
Yeah, and they will rent first. For the first few years, they will rent. Right?
100%.
That's what usually happens.
100%.
When we came
not
in the
anymore.
70s,
always they gonna rent. No one can afford now more than a condo.
Yeah. But when we came in the 70s, we lived in a basement, right? Like
Correct.
that's what happened for the first 6 months. And then we moved to an apartment and we rented that apartment for like probably 3 or 4 years before we actually bought something. right?
100%.
And
Yeah.
that's the typical, progress of immigrants in Canada. It takes time,
100%.
but that's usually what happens. And so we're not building enough to be able to house just the people that are coming, let alone the people who want to move up and down and around in their
100%.
in that are here. So what happens is that the assets that are already there is becoming more valuable. I'll tell you one thing that, the difference between Ontario and Saskatchewan. I'm still building, I'm still buying under construction cost.
Okay.
Right. So you've got to remember that, like, if you look at construction cost of buildings, you're probably looking at, let's say if you're very good at what you do, 225,000 or $225 a square foot. Right.
Okay.
Right. I'm still buying buildings under my construction cost. I am. Right. So other people may not be doing that, but I am. Okay. And so for me, that's a benefit, right? You can't even build for what I'm buying for, even though I may have, like, I may not have like my last building may not be a 4 cap, it's a 3.5 cap, but there's enough spread in the rents so that I can be able to turn over 2 or 3 units, and then I will be at a much higher cap rate, or I will be better off and have more cash flow from that asset.
So the strategy is you got the building, and then within 18 months to 2 years, you're going to have a refinance by adding value or better strategy so you can, okay, yeah, I understand, to increase the cap.
I always say 3 to 5 years because I like to be conservative. The shortest time I've ever done it is 1 year. The longest time I've ever done it is 4 years.
Because I think your problem is the rent control, because you have to buy out the tenants. This is one of the issues in Ontario.
Yeah, and there's also natural turnover. I don't think people give it enough credit. Like, usually people do leave. Although
Really?
you would think not. Yeah, you have like 10 to 20% leave annually in a building naturally. It's been less. It's been about half this year than it was last year. But natural turnover in the past historically has been 10 to 20%. Not everybody wants to live in an apartment building, especially if you're a new immigrant. Your probably goal isn't to live there for 20 years, right? You're
correct. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So, and that's what I think a lot of people aren't keeping track of. There's also the non-payers, the problem tenants. Those usually, when you take over a building, you have a few of those that you have to turn over, and that's part of natural turnover. Hopefully you can, you don't have to go through the landlord tenant board, which is a mess. But the thing is that rent control is actually reducing the number of the people who want to create rental units in Ontario. It is. I know people, that's not a popular opinion, and some people are gonna.
I hate rent control.
Yeah,
I hate rent control.
Yeah, but because it affects the amount of people who are actually building and the number of units.
Yeah.
Although it is amazing for the person who currently lives in the unit, it is never going to work for anybody else. Okay.
It's not an investor friendly market. We can say this.
That's right. And that's why a lot of people move to like, Alberta or Saskatchewan or, the East Coast or the United States for sure. A lot of I've got properties in Florida and in Tampa, and I raised the rent $400 on one unit. Right. So I moved it from $1,300. I think it was like $1,800. So it was like $500 and one
shot.
In one shot. And you know why they stayed? Because they didn't leave. They stayed. Do you know why? Because the other units were renting for $1,850 or $1,900 for the same comparable unit.
Yeah.
Stayed $50 below of what, or $100 below of what they could have got anywhere
to match the market trend.
Yeah, and then they stayed.
Correct.
And I did that, and I keep doing that again and again. And you know what? Why that makes sense is because my asset actually isn't losing value. So if I decided to sell that asset, my rent is pretty comparable to what market rent is. So I could actually have that tenant, when I sell the building, probably just stay there, unless it was somebody else who was moving in, right?
Correct.
like that's the difference between what happens in Ontario. Someone's going to want to move in because no one's going to want to keep that tenant. Anybody who's a professional investor is never going to want to keep that tenant in there in those 1 to 4 unit space. Now, in apartment buildings, it's the same. You never really want to, but you can't do anything about it. That's okay. We work through the system. I've written 2 books on property management, right? I've written 6 books altogether, 2 books on property management.
It's 5
I
or
know
6?
how this.
I was okay, 6. Okay, I was thinking it's 5. Okay.
Well, the 6th book is on scaling up, and I don't publish it on Amazon. It's only available to members and people I know.
That's
I
why I
try not
didn't.
to.
Okay,
Yeah,
that's a good point.
it's this one, this book here, the Scaling Up Toolbox. It's
Yeah, I
not
didn't see this
available.
one. Yeah, correct.
Yeah, you'd have to go to jointventurebook.com, and that's the only other place that you can
Okay.
pick it up. But it's really, the rest of them you could all get on Amazon, and that's fine.
Yeah.
And I think that, like, there are lots of ways to do it, and I've learned a lot, over the years, and I continue to learn. I don't pretend to know everything, but I know enough that my strategy works, and it's not exciting, but it's efficient. And I've been able to do it again and again, and I will continue to do it, right? And I create a great asset, and I continue to ensure that what I'm doing makes it a place where people want to live. Nobody is ever going to be 100% happy, but you know what? I always try to do the best we can to make sure that it's safe, healthy environment that where people live, and that's it.
I think because your strategy is based on off-market deals, so the challenge always will be developing relationship with your core team. And for my opinion, is your core team is gonna be your commercial realtors and
Yep.
maybe landlords in your
Yep.
target market to get this constant stream. So anyone wanna start this, he's gonna ask first how you started this relationship and what was your strategy.
Yeah, so let's say you're interested in finding properties in Belleville.
Yeah.
Go find the realtors who have done the last few multifamily transactions in Belleville, and contact them, and go out for lunch and buy them lunch, because nobody buys them lunch. They always have to buy lunch.
100%.
So go buy them lunch.
Gift
right?
cards.
Yeah, get your cards, create a relationship, let them know who you are, tell them all the transactions that you've already done. Like I've done 23 purchases. This is the type of deals that we do. If you don't have the experience, then you're going to have a bit of a challenge. So what you want to present is, okay, this is how much money I have in the bank. You could even show them your account statement. You don't have to give it to them, but show them, look, I have this money in the bank. I'm ready to go to get this done. I'm not going to waste your time, because that's what they're afraid of, right? Because there is not as many transactions that happen in the commercial space as in the residential space. They're bigger when they can be bigger. And so there are more, they're more likely to work with people they have a relationship on. Like usually when it gets on the MLS, it's because it's been picked over by other people. Right?
Correct.
Like other people have picked over them. This is what kind of came through. I think I recently saw like a 12 unit in Peterborough that just got put on the MLS for like 4.5 million. Right? I'm like, oh my God.
Like how much of the unit is? 300, 400?
Yeah, 375 per unit. Right?
In Peterborough.
Right? So like,
okay.
I don't know.
How are you going to make money on this?
Yeah, are you going to make money on it? That's the key, right? So yeah. You'd have to go and look at the numbers and see what it is. But I can tell you that I saw that unit before it got listed, or at least I saw information about it. I would not have purchased it, but I saw information about it before it went on. And
how much was it before? Do you remember?
No. That's what they wanted for it.
Ah, okay.
And it got listed at that.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Right. But I mean, if it made sense, I would have made sure that there was an offer on that property ahead of time. But if it doesn't make sense,
that's why you pass it. Yeah, I understand.
Right. Now, for like in that situation, like I saw the deal, and of course, it doesn't make sense, right? So, and that's the thing, you create these relationships, then you have flow that's either from other people, from different sources that can kind of come in, and you can see what makes sense and what doesn't make sense, right? And that takes time to develop. That's what I do every day, every week.
Networking and have know
Yeah.
more people. I was just trying to ask this. First thing on your this business is to have a to be or a great networker and always keep this relationship always every day, every month with these people, investors, realtors, contractors, landlords. By the way, landlords. So how you approach landlord in your target area?
Well, I mean, landlords in a target area, what you would find is like, what are different organizations or meetups that are in the area,
Hmm.
right? So you could find different, like sometimes you'll have landlord associations, sometimes you'll have meetup groups, things like that.
Hmm.
And then you go and attend those events and you find out who are the people that own buildings in that group.
Hmm. Hmm.
And you start talking to them. What's
100%.
funny is that you'll talk to them and then they will probably know somebody else who's selling, or they might want to sell in the future, and you're creating a relationship with them so that potentially they may sell to you in the future. So you like, it takes time. Sometimes it takes years before somebody will sell to you,
100%. 100%.
right? And a good broker, that's what they've been doing for years anyways, right?
Yeah, inviting landlords and in events, golf events, so they can maintain this relationship with landlords.
Yeah.
This is
And
their strength anyway.
yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
And so if you're working with a good broker, they can facilitate that connection. And sometimes what you can do with a good broker is they can make unsolicited offers for you,
Hmm.
right? They may know that, oh, this guy was thinking about selling a year ago. Let's see if he'll, like, if we give him an unsolicited offer, will he accept it?
Hmm. 100%.
Right?
Yeah.
Right. And that's what good brokers can do for you. So there's lots of different ways of doing it. I don't accept that there you can't find anything. I think that's a defeatist attitude. That's not
Yeah.
my
Deals is always
approach.
there.
Yeah.
Deal always there. So I think one of the greatest thing you did so far, I think, besides the investment, of course, that you created Durham REI meetups.
Yeah.
How beneficial this was for your business?
I think, you know what, if I were to do things differently, I would have probably focused more on the podcast and video channels versus doing the group itself.
Really?
I enjoy doing the group because I feel like I'm teaching more,
Hmm.
but I don't know if my like the size and scope of what I'm doing benefit is as much as it's benefiting the people who are attending the meetup group.
Hmm. Hmm.
I feel like I'm the expert in the room and I'm sharing a lot of knowledge. I really haven't found as many partners from that group as I have from attending other types of events,
Hmm.
right? Like going to entrepreneur groups, going to golf clubs, going to, other places where I've met people. I think that's been more beneficial than I think that group itself. I think I benefit a lot of people, which is nice. And you got to remember, I was a teacher for a long time,
Hmm.
right? For like 20 years. So I still enjoy teaching.
Hmm.
And so that allows me to teach. And I'm presenting. When I'm in front of the room, I'm presenting again, right? And so that makes me feel good. And also I feel like I'm helping people. So it's a nice thing. But from like helping business perspective, if I were to go back, I would probably spend more time building like a channel. I started to do like the podcast, like I have my own podcast too, Get Real Wealthy, and so that's okay. But if I spent as much time as I have on Durham REI as I did if I do on the podcast and video stuff,
Hmm.
I think that would have been a better way to get
More audience.
connected out.
Yeah.
Yeah, a
Because
wider
your
audience.
main focus is two things: raising capital, networking.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, what is your favorite meetup so far in the year? So, I heard you on one of the interviews saying that I was in a meeting when I was I felt that I was the smallest. You have a
Oh,
huge portfolio. Like so far you did. I think. By the way, how many units under management so far?
by the end of June, it'll be 500 units,
Wow.
but and that will be at about 115 million in assets under management.
Mm,
So yes, so I am part of the entrepreneur organization,
mm,
and we have what's called a forum meeting, and there's a group of us that meet from across Canada,
yeah.
and they have businesses that are bigger than me,
Mm.
like double, triple, like way bigger than I am, and so I feel like I'm learning a lot from them because I'm not the biggest fish in the room, right? I'm not
Correct.
the biggest portfolio, so I feel like I'm learning a lot, and that helps me tremendously, and that's what I like. That's where I learn best because I'm always asking questions. I'm in an EO forum group that's kind of local, and their businesses are all like 10 million or more annual income, right? They're much bigger, like they just do more stuff in different types of businesses, so I'm always learning from them. So I try to put myself in situations where I'm not the biggest. When I am in Durham REI, or I'm presenting to like meetup groups, or I'm presenting to like different meetup groups across Canada, usually I'm the biggest person in the room. Not always, but usually I'm at least in the top 1% of the room. And that's not how you learn. You put yourself in situations where you are the smallest, right? And you learn from the
To
people
give
around you.
yourself some sort of a goal for the next step. Yeah, I'm here now. This is my next. In the next 5 years, I'll be on this level. Correct?
Yeah, that's right. But you also learn different things that you haven't
Mm,
necessarily heard of before, right? So, like one of the things that I'm working on now, which I didn't hear of before and I wouldn't have, is a master insurance policy. So,
mm,
usually you'll hear of people who have a policy for each building, right?
correct.
So some of the bigger players in Canada, they will have a master policy, and they'll have different corporations, but they'll all be part of this master policy so that the insurance company can diversify their risk, because they know that one building may burn down, but the whole portfolio
Portfolio.
isn't going to
Okay.
isn't going to burn down at the same time.
Mm,
So it reduces the risk, and it could potentially allow you to reduce the cost of your insurance and diversify. Like you could have a $3 million liability across the master portfolio, and then have specific liability associated with each property. So it's a very interesting approach. I would never have learned that if I was in a room with people just like me, because they don't know any different, right?
correct. Yeah,
So
makes
this
sense.
is, and yeah, it does. And I do that, and I learn things like that all the time. And that's how I grow and learn. And I share that with people. Like this is a podcast, and I'm sharing with you so other people can learn that. And I share it, at Durham REI when I do my presentations and things like that. But there are some things I cannot share, right?
Correct.
Some of those business practices, I very much, I put books together and I share that, but there are some things that I do that work for me, that keep my business going, and I keep those to myself. But 95% of the stuff I share with other people, right?
So my other question I always love to ask people is mentor and mentorship. I think you're already a coach for you're doing coaching for people, but who was your coach?
Yeah, so I've had different coaches over the years. So Dan Sullivan would be
Mm,
from Strategic Coach, would be a great example of a coach. I've had a gentleman out on the West Coast who does Pro Coach,
mm,
and his name is Andrew, and he was great for, and again, a business coach for mindset pieces and things like that. So I've learned a lot from them. And then also peer groups like the entrepreneur organization. I found that I've learned from other peers, but not necessarily from a coaching perspective. So those have all been very helpful for me. And yes, I do coach, but so I sit on the top, and then I have a coach that works for me, and he coaches the people that come in, and then I will answer any questions that they have through like a WhatsApp channel. And also I will meet with them once a month, and then once a quarter we'll do a mastermind together.
So you're still doing it?
Only differently because my time isn't worth it. Like I do a lot more. I grow a lot more doing the real estate portfolio and buying apartment buildings, but I still want to help people. And people continue to ask me for coaching. So the only way I could do that is hire somebody who is a partner with me, who handles a lot of the like 80%. Yeah, and gets things started. And then when they have big questions that he can't answer, or they want to talk to me, then they can do that as well. So it gives them both, right? They get hands-on, and and so that's been kind of neat as well. I always try to keep helping people because I started like everybody else, and it's a way for me to kind of give back and help people. Like I didn't start with any properties, right? Like I didn't start with anything, but it just took time and took experience and time and doing different deals to be able to get to the point where I'm at now.
100%. Okay, so the next point I think is always in any investor mind is raising capital. So you go more leaning to the approach of fund, so you have the money and the commitment before finding the deal, or you find the deal first and then within the underwriting process you start to raise the money. What is your approach for this?
I only work with accredited investors, so that's a key difference. And I always get the property first and have a phone call. I have a list of people that I've talked to that are accredited investors, and I'll present them the deal once I have the deal under contract. I do not do the fund approach. I find that there's a lot of time that funds, what you're doing is you're paying for holding on to money and not necessarily putting it in deals. And there's a high overhead cost that the investors are paying for, because there's like for a fund you're talking about between $20,000 and $30,000 a year just in accounting fees, upkeep, legal, right, all of that. And who pays for that? It's not the GP.
It's gonna be the LP. Yeah,
that's right.
Yeah.
So that's what so that reduces the overall return. It makes it easier for the GP to be able to have funds ready to go. But I found that I take on projects that I can close myself anyways. So even if I don't raise the funds, I'll close on the project myself. So I've got, right now I'm raising funds for 2 projects, and if I cannot close on them with partners, I'll close on them myself. I have the funds ready to go, so I'm not really too concerned about it. And I've also been doing this for a long time, so I know that my track record will help me.
So did you, before when you start, had any situation when you didn't able to meet the fund requirement because, like during the underwriting process, you had 3-4 investor back out, so you didn't able to close the deal?
No, because I typically have a letter of intent that I sign with the partners just once they come on. I've had a case where I've had one partner that's backed out, but usually, I can cover the funds because that's what I've been able to, I know that I can kind of cover the funds to get it done. But what often will happen is I'll say to the other people, because I often will talk to a bunch of accredited investors. Whoever kind of contacts me first, I'll give them the opportunity. And there are other people who will contact me, and I'll have to say, I'm sorry, but like I've already have enough people that have committed to this project. And I might go back to them and say, well, this person has a change in their life situation. Are you interested in participating in this deal now. And some people will be ready and some people won't be ready, and that's okay. I'm not too concerned about it, but I haven't had that situation. And I need to, you got to remember, in this business, your word is your bond. I would still close on that property no matter what. I would do whatever it took to get the funds to close on the property. Like I'd sell watches, I would sell whatever I could to make sure that I closed on it, because I do not want the seller to come back and say this guy's, because there's not that many buildings, right? And your word is really important in this business.
You're gonna lose the confidence of your realtor, your whoever bring you the deal. So you're gonna lose the constant stream, which is, as you said, the off-market deals.
Yeah, it's important to have that reliability and confidence, but also your investors and the people that you are working with around you all want to know that you're going to be able to do what you say you're going to do, right?
100%.
And so that's key for me.
So you mentioned something about accredited investor, which is like famous in US, like the accredited investor with an actual limit. So for the audiences, can you just elaborate on this? Again, for GPLP, for the audiences, we mean general partner, limited partner terms. But here in Canada, I think it's different than US, the term of credit and investors.
No, it's the same. But there are more flexibility in the US than there is in Canada. The challenge is that we don't have, like in the US, you have the Securities and Exchange Commission that manage the whole of the US. We don't really have that in Canada. We have provincial agencies that handle it. Right. So in each province, we have the Ontario Securities Commission, we have the Saskatchewan Securities Commission, and they're different. Okay. So you need to know the securities law of the province that you're working with. And if you're working with investors in other provinces, you need to know the securities law that occurs with them. I am not a securities lawyer. So the best thing, so the best thing you to do is to contact a securities lawyer in the province that you're working with. So if you're working in Saskatchewan, you've got to find a securities lawyer who works in Saskatchewan. So in Ontario,
I think the rules in US is $200K for actual income or to have an actual equity more than $1 million.
So it's the same. So it's $200K for one person.
Correct.
Or $300K with a
combined household.
Combined household. 1 million of liquid net worth.
Yeah.
So liquid net worth means like stocks or cash, things like that, or a $5 million net worth that could include your real estate, right? Yeah. So it's a little different. There's also some more flexibility when it comes to the US because they have section C and D, and there's lots of different approaches. Yeah. Whereas we really don't have that in Ontario, although there's becoming more flexibility because of they're doing more crowdfunding and they're doing crowdfunding projects. So that's changing the dynamic a little bit, but it's still very complicated and it doesn't really work well for an individual investor. It may be great for a big company that can buy a whole building and then put it on to these fractional crowdfunding platforms, but it doesn't really work to be able to raise funds for a project. It's not non-functional in Canada from where I stand. It's just there's too much risk and you don't have enough time to be able to actually close. If a project closes in 60 days and by the time you get it onto the platform, it's probably like too late. You're probably gone firm on the project anyways.
Correct.
So, there's just not enough time. So it doesn't work. And the problem is that the communication between one level, the government, and what it actually happens reality is very different. And so I don't think right now that it's going to functions well. So, but an accredited investor is because they're accredited, there are it is thought that they are able to make these decisions on on asset purchases at a highly sophisticated level that they don't require the same sort of management as somebody who would be considered unsophisticated, right? And so that's why I tend to work with accredited investors because of that. It just makes it a lot easier.
I think
And
it's a rule like in GPLP you have to work with credit investor, and there's certain rules that you cannot, like how to present the deal and so on. It's similar to US, I think. The same security rules, I think.
yeah, I mean, I'm not a securities lawyer, so you're going to have to talk to a securities lawyer to be able to figure that out. I don't want to put that out on a podcast
100%.
personally,
100%.
but like talk to a lawyer to help you to understand
Yeah,
that. But you should
I've been
if you're
using
gonna.
Miller Thompson. Uh,
Okay.
yeah. So who's yours, by the way? You're using who?
Well, I don't want to. He's not going to want me to put his name
Oh, okay. No
on the
worries. Yeah,
podcast.
no worries.
Yeah.
No worries. No worries.
But yes, it's definitely something that you do need to have a good team around you, and it's taken time to be able to get to where I am to do that. So and I've made mistakes too. So I've partnered
100%.
with the wrong people,
Yeah.
and they wanted out on the project too early, and I've learned from that. I would never do that again. And now I often talk to people to figure out what their needs are, and what their timeline is, and that makes a better difference for me than just partnering with somebody because they have money. It's not
Correct.
necessarily the right approach.
So the best approach for you, I think, is a GPLP, not a regular joint venture or partnership
I
or bear
actually
trust.
I don't do GPLPs unless I have more than 10 investors on a deal,
Correct.
because it's a little too complicated, and the CMHC is going to require your LPs to probably do a personal guarantee anyways. They're not going to be able to get away from that, especially if you're just starting out.
Correct.
Maybe if you we haven't had to do that on the last few projects, but it's taken some time to get to that point. And it doesn't mean that future projects we're going to be able to get away from that. So that would be the benefit of GPLP, which kind of takes away from that process. If you're going to have to give it sounds great. And I know that there's some people that promote that, but it doesn't always work out from a financing perspective. Sometimes what legal wants and accounting wants isn't what's going to happen in financing. So you need to figure out if that's going to affect your financing, because
the lending side, yeah.
Yeah. So what's the point of having a GPLP if the LPs are going to have a personal guarantee anyways?
Correct. Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
So you usually go with bear trust and corporation, or
no, we do like a corporation, either with a shareholder agreement or a joint venture agreement in the back end. I think that works well for us. And each building has its own separate corporation, so it has its own separate share structure.
So you have a property management and real estate company and holding company, and whoever wanna buy with you is gonna take a share from the holding company, correct?
Of the building itself.
Oh,
so
okay. The real estate
building,
company.
yeah, the corporation for the building is separate. It is only thing that holds that building is that one corporation. That's
Okay.
it.
Okay. Okay.
So it makes it easy and clean for bookkeeping,
Cheaper.
liability, all of that sort of stuff. Yeah, and it's cheaper than a GPLP structure, especially for. Well, I mean, you still have annual corporate documents and minutes and things like that you have to do, but it's still less expensive than managing a GPLP structure, and it's less cumbersome.
Because you don't need a security lawyer. You can go with regular real estate lawyer, I think. Yeah.
Yep. Yeah.
I think next question for the audience will be, what is your advice for the audience about what they have to do to start their capital raising?
Learn from other people that are doing it the right way and legal way the first when you get started. I think that's the best way to do it. Watch out for people who have been watch out when you're learning from people who've just done 3 or 4 deals and they're trying to teach people how to raise funds, because that becomes it could be like they're teaching you the wrong things because it's been successful for them, but it doesn't mean that it's legal, right? And so you've got to kind of be careful of that. So look for people who've been doing it for a long time and have a a history of raising funds. And then, actually, if you pick up that book, the joint venture book, it's called The Scaling Up Toolbox. That'll give you some advice when it comes to raising capital too. So I don't know. I think I might have to send you the link for the
100%. I think it's on your website also.
No,
it's in no. Okay.
Nope, can't get it anywhere except for
why?
It's a joint venture book because I only make it available to members. There's something. Okay. There's a lot in there that I kind of kept it for members, but since people are listening, they can try to 100%. Pick it up at jointventurebook.com, and that'll be helpful for them if they're looking for money raising advice. And I talk a little bit about securities at the very beginning for people to watch out, and it goes through the entire money raising process for joint ventures.
Because you opened us, I think you're one of the most popular Canadian authors for real estate. You did the filling vacancy toolbox, the finding property toolbox, the ultimate wealth strategy, the scaling one is the one you mentioned. I was thinking it's 5, but you corrected me, it's 6. But do you recall any book grabbed your attention far from even real estate?
You mean like books that
grabbed your attention lately, like you're reading now, like?
Oh, I read books all the time. My Audible too. I was reading one recently on due diligence. I think it was called, what is it, Mastering Real Estate Private Equity.
Oh, okay.
So that was a good one. My Audible account, I listen to books all the time.
I have this one. I think I have it. This one?
Mastering.
I'm sorry.
No, I think that's a different
The Master of the Private Equity?
Robert, no, it's a different one.
No,
that's a different one. This one is Investing in Real Estate Private Equity.
Oh, okay.
So yeah, it's a different book. Yeah. So the books that I've recently listened to is The Money Revolution by Richard Duncan. A great one outside of real estate is called The Traveler's Gift by Andy Andrews. And it's about choices and choice making. And I really enjoyed it. So I thought it was a great book. And it was about how the choices that you make can change your life. And it was kind of good because it was about time travel, I guess, a little bit.
Oh, okay.
So, and it was about guy going through history. So like he goes to see Anne Frank, and then he goes to see like some general in the Civil War and Abraham Lincoln, and it's all about his own choices that he's made. Anyways, it's a great book.
Back to the 18th century. Okay, long time.
Yeah, it was pretty neat, right?
So you started like all of us with Poor Dad Rich Dad, I think.
I did. I like that book for sure. I think that was probably the book that I started with, but I read and listen to at least 3 books a month.
Wow.
I used to do 4, but now I'm at about 3. That one that I'm reading right now is called The Confident Mind. So that's the one that I'm working on now, and I've got that investing in private equity book that I'm reviewing as well. It's neat because I'm looking at it through the lens of an LP. So that's why I like that book. It's kind of looking through the lens of a potential partner and what a sophisticated investor would look at.
Great. Thanks so much for doing this. And my final question will be where our listener can follow your success.
You can follow me at getrealwealthy.com, which is my podcast, or at durhamrei.com, which is the real estate club, where I do all my speaking, and I share a lot of what's going on with real estate and what I think is going to happen in the future when it comes to real estate.
Thanks a lot for your time today, and we would like to bring you back to the show when you have time.
Absolutely. Sounds good, Adam. Catch up with me in a few months.
Thank you a lot.
You're welcome.
Thank you.